At the end of the day, it's not about what you have or even what you've accomplished. It's about what you've done with those accomplishments. It's about who you've lifted up, who you've made better. It's about what you've given back. Denzel Washington. Welcome to Inspire Vision. Our sole purpose is to elevate the lives of others and to inspire you to do the same.
Madelaine Weiss, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you. I'm delighted to be here.
Well, I'm glad to have you here. I'd love for you to share with the audience kind of who you are, your background, and I think that's important for them to understand. But also, what was the path and the journey you went on in order to bring you to this point? Because it's certainly, I think, a little bit different than one would have expected based on your background.
Yeah, there is a story. So the short of it is, I help busy people master their minds so they can live happier, healthier, prosperous, and productive lives. I'm a Harvard-trained licensed psychotherapist, board-certified executive life and career coach, mindset expert, and so on. You want to know how I got here? Yeah?
Yeah. What's the journey?
All right. Who knows what you come onto the planet with? We'll start there.
Okay.
But I do have a story that I think played a big part in who I am and where I am and what I contribute today. And that is, the little children's book, Madeleine?
I've heard of it. Not read it, but I've heard of it, yes.
Probably a lot of your listeners know about it. So there's this little book, Madeleine, and there's a little passage in the book, and it's, she was not afraid of mice. She loved winter, snow, and ice. To the tiger in the zoo, Madeleine just said, poo, poo. And so did I too many times to my dad. So I was like a pretty feisty, mouthy little girl.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can tell, but when he was 42 and I was 15, he died suddenly. And the doctor said it was a cerebral hemorrhage. And I went for years because people didn't talk to their children, or at least in my part of the world back in the day, the way we do now about their feelings and how they're interpreting their experience and all that good stuff. And so I was left to my own devices, and I figured that I was such a pain in the you-know-what that he died of me. And there was this moment in the cemetery when I finally broke down with my mother about how all my fault it was. And she said, "No, honey, it wasn't you. It was work." So no surprise, I'm in my life, if I can help one little boy or girl's mommy or daddy or anybody at all for that matter, get to those happier, healthier, prosperous, productive lives, I'm in. So
well, and you've written a couple of books. Can you share with the audience what they are and what the focus is? Because they're different focuses, aren't they?
Yes and no.
No?
Yes
okay.
No, yes, and also no. Okay, so this is the first one.
Getting to great.
And this is for adults. And one day I said to myself, all of my clients are so different from each other. Age, occupation, ethnicity, whatever, you name it. And also my training background is so varied. So there's no telling which tool I'm pulling out of the toolkit at any given time with anybody. So I just said, these people are doing well. What are we doing here? I got intensely curious because I don't follow anybody's playbook. It's an art and a science.
Yes.
In the way that I practice, and it's very organic and interactive. So it's like, what's happening here that's working? What is the common denominator? I wanted to know, was there something that applied to all that was helping them get from meh in their lives to really feeling great about their lives. And I laid all my folders out and I'm looking at them like, and I came up with this 5-step process. And that's what the first book is, this 5-step strategy for work and life. The reason, and this launched November 19th, so I'm pretty excited.
Yeah, what's your story?
So the reason I said to you yes and no is because this was for the adults, but I kept hearing adults saying to me, why did somebody teach me this when I was younger? It could have spared me from hitting the wall a few times by the time I got to, I don't know, 30, 40, 50, whatever it was, and making myself and everybody around me miserable in the process. If only I had known just a few simple things that can make all the difference in the world. And I thought, that's so true. And sometimes I'll work with my clients on their parenting. Not that I niche ever in that area, but it just sort of came to be that, they'll talk to me about their children and I'll come up with a couple of ideas for them that work like magic. And so I thought I really have to do one for kids. So I did. So the message is very similar, really, but one is packaged for adults and one is packaged for kids.
Okay. And, one of the things that I found fascinating and I thought would be an interesting thing to talk about a bit was this, what you call parental burnout. And,
Yeah.
what I have found is that as I've done so many podcasts, studied and researched and all of these type of things, that as children, they have their own perception. And as parents, we might say something that we think is just loving and kind, and their perception is we're saying they're no good, all of that type of thing. And
Oh, you're so right.
I have found that parents really struggle, and sometimes there's those parents that are really consciously working hard with their kids. And then there are other parents, unfortunately, that are so busy at work that they're kind of ignoring that whole situation, even though they have the kids. So let's talk about both. What can parents do to help their children to have a healthier mindset, a healthier experience so that they don't have all those subconscious imprints later on in life? Number one question.
Yeah.
And number two question is then how do we help parents who are experiencing burnout because their kids are difficult?
Okay. Great questions. First of all, there's a study to support what you're saying. I forget how many kids they asked.
Right.
If there was one person that you could think of, I think it might have even included fictional characters. I don't know, but who would you want to have dinner with or whatever it was? And all of them were saying their parent. They yearn to be with their parent, and it tells you something about what the availability is. Parental burnout, I have a definition. I pulled a bunch of stuff for you, is defined by psychologicalscience.org as an intense exhaustion that leads parents to feel detached. Keyword detached. I'm coming back to that. Detached from their children and unsure of their parenting abilities. It's actually more than that. They feel in general, I had a client yesterday who described it so vividly, detached from everything. So you have 75% working parents. And I asked the Human Resource Association, do you say working parents now? Because parenting is pretty important work. So how do you say that? So anybody who's having a problem with that, I don't know how else to say it. They couldn't tell me, so I'm going to say working parent.
Okay.
So 75% of them say that their children's mental health is their primary concern, which means that when they're at work, they're having trouble focusing. pretty much on anything, because there's this overwhelming feeling of no matter what they're doing, it's not good enough anywhere. And to a degree, they're not wrong about that because they're so detached everywhere.
Yeah.
So, which part of your many wonderful questions did I not answer?
Well, the parental burnout, and then also
Oh,
that's
you
what
want
that
to tip?
is. But how do you help?
Yeah.
How do you help the people that are burned out? How do you help them to really become that good parent? And then for those that are not quite so burned out and really focused on helping, again, how do they make sure that the perception of their children is such that it's actually true with what the parent is seeking to teach them or trying to say or trying to communicate?
I'm going to tell it in a story. So there's this woman, she works for the Treasury, and she travels a lot, and she has a 4-year-old. And every time she's about to leave on her trip, the 4-year-old has a meltdown. And this very good woman who means well, certainly by her child, and is just trying to do everything well, she'll say to him things like, "It's okay, Daddy will be here." She tries to comfort the child. "Daddy will be here. I'll only be gone for 2 days, and then I'll be home, and we'll do this and this and this and this." So what she does, she tries to cheer him up. And even though her intentions, are so good, what she's doing is she's leaving the child alone with his feelings. So when he grows up to be an adult, if that continued, which it's not going to, because I had my way with her,
Good.
and I'll tell you what that is. But had she continued to do that as an adult, he would have a very hard time navigating his own life because he wouldn't have any inner guidance that he could trust. Because when he presented his feelings to his mother, she told him why he should not feel that way. So the tip, and if listeners take one thing, take this. The tip is, there's right brain, left brain. It's oversimplified, but it's useful to do so for things like this. So the kid is having a right brain meltdown. He's all emotion. He's not thinking straight. He can't even hear what she's saying. She's trying to talk reason and logic to him. He can't hear it. And if he can hear it, he can't process it because he's in a different place. So what she needed to do was, before she told him why it's going to be all right and he shouldn't have the feelings that he's having, she acknowledged those feelings. I know it sounds really simple, but it's not instinctive somehow. Parents want the kid not to feel bad, and so they try to fix it. But what she started to do was she started to say things to him like, "I know this is always hard for you. When mommy goes away, you feel whatever it is he said he felt." And she really acknowledged that. And it got to the point where the kid said to her, and I'm laughing because I think it's so funny, the kid said to her, "Just go. Okay, fine, good, go." Because he got what he needed. He needed to have his feelings acknowledged. He needed to know his feelings were okay. And he needed to know that he was not alone in those feelings, that there was somebody who got him.
Well, and as you bring that up and you bring up left brain, right brain, I'm very fascinated by personality and behavioral profiles, and I'm actually certified in one particular one. But the way that I got interested in that was years ago. I had two of my boys. One was a senior and one was a sophomore in high school, and they were fighting like crazy. And I was in a group, a networking group, and they had invited this gentleman in, and he talked about personalities. And he had created his own personality program and so forth. And I found it fascinating. And so I had both of my boys go through a program with him. And here's what we discovered. The younger son, right brain. Now, right brain, left brain, but very much focused right brain. The other son, very left brain. And so the left brain son would be talking to him very strongly and so
Uh-huh.
forth. And, the emotions and the sense that the other son was getting was really tough. They went through this program. They started to understand that, and they became best friends. And to this day, they are still
What a
best
good
friends.
story.
Yeah.
What
And
a good-
and I think you bring up an important point because so often as parents, number one, we don't even have a clue as to this whole concept of right brain, left brain. And obviously there are other elements to that. But as you say, to keep it simple, if a right brain parent is speaking to a left brain child, the left
Yeah.
brain child is going to go, just give me the data, okay? And if the left brain parent is talking to the right brain child, they have no idea how that child is perceiving. In fact, I had to finally sit down with my kids and say, look, you guys, here's the bottom line. I have a tendency, because I'm very left brain, I have a tendency to just give my opinion a lot. And oftentimes you're going to interpret that as a criticism. So when we're talking, if you want me just to listen, tell me.
Oh, good.
Dad,
Yeah.
I just want you to listen. If you want my opinion, then say, Dad, I would like your opinion. And I found that once we started doing that, it made all the difference in the world for them.
And how much does that apply to couples?
Oh, well, yeah, it applies to everybody. And
Everything.
that's why I got into this whole behavioral thing, because it is so applicable that people understand, number one, who the other person is, how do they want to be communicated with, what are the words that you need to avoid, and all of a sudden, if someone were to actually take the time to really develop that mindset of going, okay, I'm going to communicate with this person in the correct way. And then as they communicate back, listen and make sure that you're really understanding what each other is saying. I think that makes the whole difference.
That is, yeah. What a great story you just told about your kids, for your kids, and for everybody listening. I have stuff in this book on the brain for kids. I watered that down a little bit.
Okay, there you go. And for you folks just listening, picture of the brain.
And then the whole back of the book is activities like scenarios that happen for kids, and they can apply the techniques to the scenarios and write a story about it. So that's, yeah.
Yeah, and it's interesting as we talk about perceptions, we talk about life, then stress really comes into it. And I have observed so many people that are experiencing such stress and anxiety in their lives. And based on your experience, does it really begin in childhood? And how can we as parents prevent that from being as strong as it happens? And number two, how do we help people who are experiencing that high stress, that anxiety, to overcome that and to really reach a much more settled, peaceful type of existence in their minds?
A couple of things on that. So we're talking about soothing, self-soothing, which does begin, we know, right, in early childhood. If things go well, the child learns how to self-soothe from being provided the proper environment. But the thing that I want to say, without getting too technical, that I think is really important, and it came up with a client yesterday who's a new mom. She just bought a new house. She has a new job. She's stressed to the max. She's exhausted. And it's sort of like wearing like dirty gray colored glasses, like everything is like lost on her right now. And she started saying things like she, exercise, nutrition, sleep, journaling. She brought all these things up. And she said this, which maybe some of your listeners could resonate with. She said, I just feel so selfish. She said, there's something about all this, like self-care that almost disgusted her in a way
Interesting.
because she has all this responsibility, and who is she to be thinking about herself? And I turned that around with her by saying that it wasn't just her right, but also her responsibility. And that there's a well-worn analogy about when you're on the airplane, you have to put the mask on your own face first. Otherwise, you're fainted on the floor and you're no good to anybody if you don't have any oxygen. And trying to really help her frame it. And that's the thing with the mind, makes up stories, it frames things. And we have to be more in charge of it than it is in charge of us, which is what I mean by mastering the mind. Not that the mind doesn't do its thing, but that we're more in charge of it than it is in charge of us. And the idea was for her to reframe it that she could feel bad about herself if she didn't take care of herself, because she's got a boss who's counting on her. She's got a little kid who's counting on her. She has a husband who's counting on her. She has an extended family who all need for her to be well. So in a sense, that's the most important, necessary obligation she has. So this thing about it being selfish, we just turned it on its head. It's a must do that we take care of ourselves for all the people who are counting on us.
Yeah, and I find so often we're so busy trying to do this, do that, and I've gotten myself in trouble occasionally when I'm at church. Okay, because so often they're talking about do, and I know that creates such stress, that creates such senses of guilt and so forth. And I'll say, and I apologize to any listeners that don't believe the way I do, but I ask the question: did Christ do what he did so he could become Christ, or did he do what he did because he was Christ? And my point was we can only do what we are. And when we truly, as you say, work on ourselves and really become that individual that we truly are, then that behavior automatically flows. And I think it changes the whole experience of our lives.
Well, yes, indeed. And part of that 5-step process is the discovery of who we are, and the quieter we become inside. So it's not only, how we extend ourselves doing on the outside, but there's a lot of noise on the inside. And the quieter we can make that, then the guidance, the how to be who we are, the best version of ourselves, bubbles up. People talk about meaning and purpose like you have to dig for it. I don't think that. I believe that if we get quiet, it's there, and we'll be able to feel it and see it and hear it. And
absolutely. And sometimes sometimes it's just that aha moment that hits you, and it's like, wow. But I think it only, as you're right, it only becomes as they're willing to listen, to contemplate, and so forth. I know you have a lot of exercises in your book on how they can accomplish that. What are some of those examples?
Which book are we talking about?
You know what? I think it's great. I think it's getting to great. It's talking about focus and release, power breathing, those type of things.
Well, for sure, the power breathing. That little 30-second mindset reset. If I could think of like one thing that would have the most leverage, the most impact, with the least effort, let's say, it's that 30-second mindset reset. And on my website, MadelaineWeiss.com, there's a tab at the top that says Power Breathe. And there's a one-sheet PDF that can be downloaded or just read on there, and it's free, and anybody can go there and get that. And I highly recommend that. But I'm smiling because there's an exercise. So the great book has chapters segmented, like I have one on time. Separate from that, I have one on money. Separate from that, there's, one on other people. And I'm laughing because when you asked that, I was thinking about the money one, which I can tell you about if you'd like, which I
Oh,
did
absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, so I thought this was funny. So the exercise is that you imagine that you're like on the Dr. Phil show. So it's Dr. Phil and it's you and it's your money. So you know how he might have a mother and a daughter or a couple and they're going at each other. So the going at each other is you and your money are trying, kind of like your sons are trying to learn how to understand each other so they could have a good relationship. So I did this exercise and the money went first and talked about what it's like to be in a relationship with me. And this was years ago when I wrote the book. I think that was 2021. And anyway, so the money said to me, you don't appreciate me. You don't enjoy me. You don't acknowledge me. You just let me sit there. I just sit there. I'm here to serve you. I want to make you happy. I want to keep you healthy. And you ignore me and just let me sit there and don't do anything with me ever. I thought, and there was so much truth to that. And it is astounding to me that this funny little exercise actually changed my life because I related to my money from that moment on much more appreciatively, like spending more and enjoying it more instead of just sitting there like that. And it's so much better. And then somehow, believe it or not, it was like magic. I don't know how it grew and grew and grew. And I know it sounds ridiculous, but I really do attribute some of that to having this change of mindset. More to abundance than scarcity is how the experts tend to talk about the money thing.
Well, and it really is interesting, as we talk about the energy that comes out of us. And as you say, if we can change that energy with the mindset from the lack of and the scarcity to abundance, we attract that. The energy attracts that. And I know that scientifically they have proven this, which is just amazing to me that they're able to do that.
Manifestation.
Yeah, and I love what you talk about the power breathing. It's interesting. I've interviewed so many people, and each one of them have talked about a different model of breathing. A lot of it has to do with meditation and so forth. But, you're talking about a 1 minute power breathing type of situation.
No, I'm talking 30 seconds.
Oh, 30 seconds. Okay, 30 seconds. And so what is that for you? I'm curious of what is the power breathing to you?
I'm not sure what do you mean by the question? Do you mean
show me power breathing. Yeah, show me how you do it.
Okie dokie. So sit up nice and straight, feet flat on the ground, top of the head parallel with the sky, chin tucked in slightly. And the magic of this is going to be that typically, especially anxious breathing, when we breathe, we fill the lungs. So this is diaphragmatic breathing like the singers do. People sing. You fill the stomach instead of the lungs, which is not natural for adults. I think maybe babies did, but somehow we outgrew the naturalness of filling the belly instead of the lungs. When you fill the belly instead of the lungs, you activate the polyvagal nerve, which goes from the abdominal area up to the brain. And it is not only calming, but it takes you out of fight, flight, takes you out of sympathetic into parasympathetic, which is more calming. But importantly, because people worry if they get calm, they'll get dull. So I want to be very clear here that it's about clarity. So what it does is it kicks things upstairs to the higher brain where you're much clearer and smarter. So, and that takes 30 seconds. I like to advise, and I've consulted with medical people on this. I like to advise in through the nose and out through the nose. I know a lot of people prefer in through the nose and out through the mouth.
Mm-hmm.
And that I understand is good for energizing, but when we're trying to get focus and clarity, I was told that in through the nose and out through the nose. So we're going to do that. And we're going to belly out on the in-breath and belly in on the out-breath. Before we do it, try that once. Just
Well, and interesting, and I'm just going to bring this up. My dad was a classical voice teacher, taught at Northwestern University in
So
in the Chicago area, and
Yeah.
he would teach us. And none of his kids really ever sang. A couple of us sang, but nothing like his his students. And when he taught us to breathe in singing, it was breathe, and he referred to it as not only the stomach but the back. So when I breathe in, I feel the back extend as well as the stomach, and that really makes a difference for me when I do that.
feel that. I had not heard that. I didn't know that, but I just did it and I felt it. So thank you.
And that's how the classical singers are taught to breathe. And I think that's where that power comes from when you hear those classical voices, which I think is amazing. But it fascinates me. So as they're doing it, they just do it for 30 seconds. So it's a number of breaths, just
It's
in and
about
out.
three. For
Three.
me, that I take 3 breaths.
And do you hold
I'm
it at all? Do you hold it at all when you breathe in?
Well, I know that there are people who do that. So they, in 5, out 7 or something along those lines. I like to keep it really simple because I want people to do it a lot. So I don't want them to have to think about it. I want it to be natural without thinking or counting or anything. And those breaths are like really luxurious. I like to say that. Really deep, luxurious, like really enjoy it. We take our, like I took my money for granted. We take our breath for granted. Where would we be
Yes,
without it,
yes.
for crying out loud, right? So do you wanna do one or?
No, I think you've explained it well, and hopefully the folks will do it. I tend to do
Okay.
it as I'm doing my walking meditation, and so, but I have to say I probably am not focusing on doing that lower abdomen back breathe in, and I'm going to have to remember to do that.
Once you start doing that again, it will become habit.
Yes, yes. And
And
so,
I have it in the book for the kids.
do you really?
Yeah.
Let's talk about that book for a minute. Just kind of outline what your message is to the kids in that book.
Well, I wanted the kids to know that the mind makes up stories for us to live in. And to know that is to help us to be able to team up with the brain to produce better stories. So again, it's this being more in charge of what's happening in there that's directing our lives. I don't think little kids know. Well, the thing was, I have this wonderful little 8-year-old granddaughter. And I was saying at the beginning of writing this book, I said something about thinking is like having a conversation with your brain. And she said to me, "Oh my God, I do that all the time." And like she was letting out the secret about what she knew about what was going on in there. That the way she said it made me think that she wasn't sure that was okay.
Yeah.
So this book tells kids we're all doing that. And to know it is to be able to do it better. And I think that would be the message.
And are they mature enough at a young age to actually be able to start to do that?
Well, she, at the time we started discussing it, she's turning 8, December 17th. But when we started discussing it, it was like January or something. So she was just 7.
Uh-huh.
And she really, then she said to me, she must have been thinking about the conversation, because a couple of weeks later, she said, I have something to tell you. I said, of course, yeah. She said, everything I'm thinking, they're not all things that like really happened. A lot of them are things I wish would happen. And I said, and that's your imagination. And she didn't, again, I had the feeling like she didn't know that that was normal and great to be able to have that kind of mental activity. She was like, she was very private until she
Yeah.
told me, you know?
And
So-
what a difference it would make for our society if our young children could start at that point in time and recognize, and I kind of use the example of the fact that they are not only the author, but they are the director of their own movie, their life. And
I love that. I say that too.
they have the ability to create that movie in any direction that they'd like it to go. And, and recognize that, in any good movie, you have challenges that come up, but you also have that hero overcoming the challenges. And, for them to be able to do
I have
that.
a graphic in here
Okay, let's see it for those that are watching the video.
on super, what you just said.
Oh, wow. I love it.
That was a Disney designer who did these. I'm crazy
that's
about them.
great.
Yeah,
That's
he did a great job. He kept them nice and simple and
Yeah.
crisp.
So what a difference it would make. Because as we see what's going on right now in the society, the anger,
Not just the kids.
frustration. Oh, I know the adults too. And that's even harder for them because they've been living with this thing for so long. But if you talk about starting a movement, if you talk about what you would like to actually accomplish in a movement, what would it be? Because it sounds like you kind of have that mentality.
It would be this. I'm actually taking this, doing an after-school program in January for DC kids. 2/3 of DC kids are reading below grade level.
Yeah.
So we're putting this program together. It would be that they understand more about their inner and outer worlds and how to navigate them successfully in school and life. There's a dad who's a VP finance. I did some webinars for them on purpose-driven investment planning. And I mentioned I was writing the book for kids, and he said, "Oh my God, I have kids. You have to tell me when it's out, blah, blah, blah." So I sent the ARC, the advanced review copy, to him, and he did it over summer vacation with the kids. And the reason I'm saying them for the adults too, he said he had so much fun doing it with them, and he catches the kids when they're feeling stressed, power breathing. But the part I like the best, he said, and I have to admit, I learned a few things myself, and now the kids call me out when they catch me reacting instead of responding.
Oh, I love it. Our kids can be our best teachers sometimes, can't they?
Oh, yeah. Well, actually, when my granddaughter read the introduction, she said to me, she said, you could put a question right here. It could say something like, have you ever noticed, talking to you, whatever. And I thought, oh my God, she's so right. everybody knows you have to put a question in there. How come I didn't put a question?
So remind the audience about this book. Yeah, is it out or when's it coming out? And
It
the
is
name of
out.
it and how do they find it?
Okay, so it's What's Your Story? This is what it looks like.
What's
There's a
your
little
story? And it's got a little boy there.
Well, that's too bad. I tried to make it look as appealing to boys and girls as I could. It was hard. So it looks like a boy to you, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, anyway, it's on Amazon and Barnes and Noble. I noticed it was there as well. Um, Probably by the time this airs, the Celebration Kindle sale will be over. But I kept the pricing very low in general because I want people to read it and enjoy
Oh,
it with their
that's
kids.
great. That's great. And as we end the podcast, number one, how do people find you? And reiterate that. I know you've mentioned it before. And then number two, what would be your final message to the audience?
So in the book, I have the activities segmented into inside relationship stories and outside relationship stories. So those are like your relationship to yourself and your relationship to others. I studied Advaita Vedanta, pre-Hindu tradition for 25 years, believe it or not. And they have a concept that I'll leave you with. It's good company. And good company is not just the people that you invite into your life. It's the books you read, the music you listen to, the food you eat. And importantly, it's the thoughts in our head as well. The company we keep is the company that's inside our head. Is maybe most important of all. And then certainly the relationships that we build. And the studies are all saying that longevity hinges on healthy, long, deep relationships.
Yes, that's
So
true.
good company.
All right. And how do they find you? What's your website?
So my website is MadelaineWeiss.com. It's a funny spelling, MadelaineWeiss, MadelaineWeiss.com, and everything is there. So my
Great.
blog is there, the power breathing gift is there, all my social is there, and also there are icons that people can click on right there for the books. So
Wonderful. Well, Madeleine, and I mispronounced it. You're right, because I did not say Madeleine. I said Madeleine. And I go through that all the time with my own last name. So anyway, Madeleine, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you, Dr. Doug. That was really good to
Well,
chat
I
with you.
really appreciate it. You have such great insights, and obviously you're caring about people, and your desire to make that improvement in their lives, to me, is just phenomenal. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
And folks, thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed it and look forward to having you join us again soon. So this is Dr. Doug saying namaste.